The Leave Your Legacy podcast is supported by Wise Financial. Wise Financial is a Northwestern Mutual private client group member. For over 20 years, Wise Financial has dedicated its efforts to designing comprehensive wealth management strategies for business owners and many accomplished athletes. Through their efforts, Wise Financial has been recognized as an industry-leading firm. The Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Hello and welcome to the Leave Your Legacy Show. I'm your host, Kenyon Murray, and today we have two very special guests, not only to me, but if you call yourself a Hawkeye fan, they're very special to you. So coming to the show today, like I said, two very, very special guests. I would call them my other mom and dad. They've really taken me in. They've been there for me ever since I played at the University of Iowa. But help me welcome Mike and Patty Street to the show. Guys, how are you doing today?
We're doing good. How about you, Paul?
Oh, I'm doing great.
We appreciate you having us here, Kenyon.
Absolutely. No, it's people know, like, you know, I don't think a lot of people know how special our relationship is. I think people who've been basketball fans, they know that I played with Chris, but I don't know that they even know the depth of what that relationship was like. But you guys do. And you have to tell the audience like what you used to call Chris and I when when we were hanging out when I came to campus as a freshman.
I still remember so vividly how he would say you were salt and pepper.
Yeah.
And you know what salt and pepper means? You're always together.
Yeah.
And it's a special bond that you had.
Absolutely.
And so we've carried that with us to this day.
Yeah.
You know, we think of you as pepper, of course, Christopher is salt.
Yeah.
But two great boys that met and continue to have a relationship, whether he's in heaven or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the picture that stands out in my mind is when he brought you over to Sarah's volleyball match.
Yeah.
All the family there, and you're right in the middle. And needless to say, you kind of shined out a little bit.
Just a little bit. That's funny. Yeah.
You were his little brother then, and now you still are. That's the way we look at it.
Yeah, you know, I think, people that know me know that he was a big reason why I came to the University of Iowa. I think, like you said, we really clicked from right away. So for me, it wasn't just about basketball and having a chance to play. It was just something about him that first time meeting him, I was like, okay, like I can get down with this guy. And we're so different, he's a farm boy and hunted, and I was, quote, a city boy that didn't know how to do anything. But he was really the last piece for me to be like, okay, I want to come and play here, because I knew playing with him would make me better, and I knew he would push me. And that's the one thing that, I always, I think I told you this, like I always was like, I hope he's proud of me and the things that I've done. So it was very special to me. And I know if it wasn't him, I probably wouldn't have come to Iowa. So I really appreciate that. But let's talk about this. Let's go back, because you guys just said, like, you married 52 years now. So how did this whole Mike and Patty thing come together in small town Iowa?
Well, actually, Mormon Trail is made up of 4 small towns.
Okay.
And she lived actually out in the country towards Leroy, Iowa, which I'm sure a lot of people know where that is. But anyway, and I was at Humiston, and actually our brothers and sisters were kind of a thing.
Okay. And
end up brothers married sisters and so forth. So I got to blame them a little bit. But no, she was 4th grade. We were at middle school, and kind of had she was the best woman athlete, I would say, or girl athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that attracted each of us too. So,
gotcha.
And we were on and off till, she, just took me and wouldn't let me go.
I love it. That's how you remember it too, right, Patty?
No, not quite that way.
Yeah.
But I mean, it had to be. We were married young.
Yeah.
And, for people that, we weren't the only ones back then. It seemed like, a lot of couples were married younger.
Yeah.
And it wasn't easy. I mean, it wasn't always easy. I mean, there were your ups and downs, but I guess after you have a family, you really that's important to you and you want to keep your family together.
Yeah.
So then you just kind of let one thing go in, one ear and one out the other, and you endure.
Yeah.
And that part was important to both of us to have a long marriage, and we're still here and putting up with each other.
Yeah.
And sometimes, Kenyon, I think it gets harder the older you get.
Yeah. We kind of get set in our ways or whatever.
We
yeah.
do.
Kind of a habit to have around now.
Yeah, right.
It's hard to break that habit.
I love that. So you guys got married, and then how? And I know you guys were married. You were in college and you were playing football, Mike. So,
Right.
When did you guys have Chris? Was that before you went to college, or was it when you were?
No, we had Christopher my freshman year in college.
Year? Okay.
And then actually Sarah was born in our junior year, wasn't it?
Senior
year.
Okay.
So
wow.
We had 2 children, but at Central College there was at least a half a dozen football players married, I'd say, and some of them. So no, it was. It was an exception to the rule, but not totally off the charts.
Yeah.
So to speak.
Yeah, it's different. Yeah, you wouldn't see that. Really, wouldn't see that nowadays. Any of that. But yeah. So what? Like how? We'll talk a little bit about it. So you have Chris. You have Sarah. You're still in college. Like, and you said it was hard. Like, what's some of the good memories though you had, like being in college and being young parents and that kind of thing? Because obviously you're a student and you're playing football, and that takes up a lot of time. So I think it's sometimes like you think about the difficult stuff, but like what was some of the like really fun and nice stuff that happened when you guys were young parents going through that?
I think the best part of being young parents is you do a lot with your children.
Mm-hmm.
You're still young. You can do at that time about anything.
Yeah.
So we just had little outings. Because the money was very tight.
Yeah.
And but we, just like little picnics. He sprayed in the summertime, and Christopher and I would get in the car and go out in the field and take him lunch.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that is why Christopher was such a hunter.
Yeah.
Because he was always, in the country.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
But other than that, and we'd go to ball games. We played slow pitch, and he would go with us. But as far as really any
like big excursion,
there was no way we did because the money was so tight. But yet you endured.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You didn't expect a lot at that time. You were working for later years when you got your degree, and so that was just part of it. Just the little things.
Yeah.
Is what you did.
That's so awesome. And I know, like with Chris, he was always a very, very good big brother. So like, it was, because it was like, that was the one thing I love. Like, we would come back because he's like, I gotta go see my sisters, watch Sarah play and things like that. So, how was he young? Like, was he very protective of his sisters or was he, you start laughing.
He was, but yet he was also ornery.
Yeah.
And he'd tease them until Sarah would get so mad that they would be, she was just swinging her arms, and then he'd get her to that point where he'd just laugh.
Yeah.
And then she was getting at him, and he would just laugh and didn't have any strength because he was laughing so hard.
Oh, that's so funny.
But he was protective because we lived in the country, and with Sarah and Betsy, or Christopher and Sarah, that's the main friends they had was each other.
Okay.
Yeah, they played a lot.
Sarah would play catch with him, and play basketball with him, because she didn't always have friends there.
Yeah.
And so I think that connection of always just having each other was what made him more maybe protective of her.
Yeah.
But yet she was and Betsy too. But since Sarah and Christopher were together, closer together, she was protective of him.
Yeah.
Very situation.
Well, and Chris would spend a lot of time. If I'd go anywhere, he'd be in the truck or car with me, and we done a lot of fishing in the summertime.
Fishing,
when he was, I think, maybe 2, maybe 3. He could cast a
2.5.
2.5. He could cast a rod and reel and catch fish and.
An adult rod.
Yeah.
It wasn't the little kids' rods.
Yeah.
It was an adult
was,
rod. But
and then when he got to be in 12, I mean, he was just a natural, and I think about the first. Of course, we'd shot some clay pigeons and different things, but when he got to be 12, we bought him his shotgun, and I think about the first or second shot, he killed a pheasant and out hunting. I mean,
yeah.
And then about the third or fourth one, a quail got up and he killed it. So, he was. We were active outdoors, and we had some hounds that when later after we graduated. And we run coyotes, and he'd be out there. We'd go coyote hunting and different things, and loved turkey hunting. And I'm sure he drug you into
That's
that.
the one thing he wanted to get me to do. Yeah, because I was like, it was funny because I remember talking about this, and he was like, "Yeah, I got to get you hunting." I was like, "It's like, Chris, I've never gone hunting, right?" And he looked at me. I was like, "Hey, just because I'm from Battle Creek doesn't mean I've handled a gun before." I was like, "Dude, I've never handled a gun before." So like, you would have to teach me from like literally from scratch, like how to do this thing. So we would always joke about that because I was like, in the creek we don't go hunting. We just hang out, and play basketball. But
I remember Johnny Hartley was another real good friend of his, and Johnny was talking about they're going down the road, and he stopped because he seen a flock of turkeys out there and wanted to show John the turkey. He said, "I could care less about the turkey," but he had to show me. And as we talk about turkey hunting, that was actually the last thing I talked to him about.
Yeah.
Back then, you had to actually apply for your license,
right,
and a drawing, and he said he wanted to make sure I had the application sent in. Talk to him. So
last time that you talked to him on the phone.
Yeah,
and you told him to call me. You better call your mom because I wasn't at the store yet.
Okay, gotcha.
And he said, "No, just tell her I'll see her tomorrow night."
Yeah.
Game.
Yeah.
Something that I did want to just highlight on a little bit as far as a bigger brother.
Yeah.
He was such a caregiver. He was only 8 and Betsy was born.
Yeah.
And of course, she would have her fussy time in the evening, and Mike wasn't home from work yet.
Yeah.
And he was always good with babies and children. And he would walk her and feed her. He didn't change her diapers. I wouldn't make him do that. But he would just so good and gentle with babies and young kids. He just loved them.
Yeah.
That's why I like Kenyon. Kind of act like a baby.
That's
baby
about
brother.
Right. That's about right. We'll talk about that.
To say that.
We'll talk about that official visit story when he told me I couldn't embarrass him like that.
I know it in the classroom when you're in the you knew the answer and he didn't. And
yeah, that's funny. He's like, you can't be doing that. But what has really come out is he was so natural at so many things, whether it was, like you said, caring for his sisters or hunting, fishing, and obviously sports. He was super athletic. And I know you guys made the decision to move to Indianola because of the opportunity that it would pose for him to play at a higher level because he wanted to play in college. So I wanted to go back to that decision. Was it a hard decision for you guys to make, and did he have a part in the decision to move to Indianola and play at a bigger school?
You want to take that?
No, you can.
Actually, during the summer of that year, between his freshman and sophomore year of high school, they were pitching, and I thought they overworked his arm a little bit, to be right honest with you. And so a lot of things had built up, and I said, and a few people had told me, said, "Mike, you need to get him to a bigger school."
Yeah.
And so anyway, we looked around and him hawed at different places, and finally, I'll give my brother credit, which he says, "Well, if you're going to do it, don't be just going up one class, go up 2 classes at least." And that's kind of why. And I worked out of Indianola at the time.
Okay.
So anyway, and so I knew some people from Indianola and their children, and so we finally come to the point where we just had to make a decision.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, we're going to do it. I don't know how we're going to do it." And we didn't have a house located, but And actually, whether he had any input into it or not, basically the answer is no.
Yeah, gotcha.
I just, we just said we're going to do it,
Mm-hmm.
and he would say he was hesitant, and Sarah. I mean, it was tough on Sarah too, coming into a bigger school,
and that was kind of a hard age too. Sarah was going into 7th grade, and then he was going into being a sophomore, so that was kind of just a. But he did say after the fact, he said, "Oh, I'm so." He was glad.
So I'm going to tell you this. So that story in itself is exactly what we did with Chris and Keegan going to prep school. And I mean, I know I'd never asked you that question before, and you hadn't told us about it, but that was the same way. It was, I didn't know how we were going to do it, but I knew it was the right thing to do. And Chris and Keegan were completely against it. And I said, this is the only time I'm going to tell you guys that you have to do something. And so I think there's those times where, as parents, we may feel that it's the best, and we took a leap of faith too, and you guys did too. Like, that's the thing. Like, we don't know what's going to happen, but we know that if we don't want to look back and regret it.
That's exactly how we thought. And in both situations, the dear Lord guided us in the right direction. Absolutely. But at the time, it's scary. I mean, as a parent, because those kids are your responsibility to do the best for them. And it was scary. It was.
We finally ended up renting a house for a month or two, because back then you didn't have open enrollment either. You had to be a resident. So we had to get residency, and I mean, we're talking 2 weeks before. I mean, actually, 1 week before school.
It was
really,
and because football had a
1st of
camp.
August, we decided.
Okay.
He had a football camp. He had to start
So
going
he got to meet
also.
some kids there, and one of the players that he knew, well, my boss's son actually, so kind of introduced him around. So that helped. I mean. And but
it's not like he didn't stand out either.
That's
and there's a funny story there that he's after we were there, and I think it was before the first game, though. Obviously, it was Joe Blake, which a lot of people know Joe Blake, great, and Casey Blake's dad, and and Joe played AAA ball, but anyway, good guy that you respected his opinion. And so anyway, he's down watching football because he had an older son. Ben Blake was
a senior at that
time. And anyway, so he calls Bert Hansen, which is the basketball coach, and Bert talks about that, and Joe says, "Coach, you need to get down to football practice." And Bert says, "What for?" "Well, there's a guy down there a head taller than everybody else. You might want to look at him." Is he pretty good? Well, Joe says, "I think he's pretty good, and I think he's even better at basketball. You better." So that's the first time that Bert even knew we were in town and so forth. So anyway,
not a whole lot of gossip going on around then. Like no social media. Like, hey, this big kid just showed up in Indianola.
Well, and that was one of the factors that we moved to Indianola. Not only, I mean, there's several factors, but one of them was the Des Moines Register didn't know Mormon Trail existed, and back then that was the only press or media you had. I mean. As you talk about, no social media, no nothing, and probably maybe he would have. But I mean, we wanted to have the opportunity, and I coached him in AAU, and I don't know what the age group was. Anyway, we finished second in AAU and went down to Arkansas, Jonesboro, and played.
I remember that.
That was when he was in high school.
Junior in high school.
We didn't make he must have been. 7th grade, I suppose, about that time. But we got second to Iowa City West.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And they could pick up one player, and I was really disappointed they didn't pick him up because we went into overtime. I remember, right? Christopher fouled out. Otherwise, we give them everything they wanted. And once he was fouled out, we were.
Yeah.
But anyway, so, I was trying to do things to get people aware of him.
Right.
And without moving and everything. But as it turned out, we were, as Patty said, the good Lord. Evidently whispered the right things, or got the shock in her rear and got her in gear. And
well, that's the same thing. Like, I mean, honestly, our stories mirror, because it was the same thing with Chris and Keegan. Like, I was, whether it was through social media, I created a website for them. I was emailing coaches. Like, it's just one of those things. Like, as a parent, you're like, you probably knew his work ethic. So whatever opportunity he got, he was going to work his tail off. Same thing for mine. And it's interesting now looking back on it, how there's been a few coaches that have come up to me and is like, yeah, you know, we kind of made a mistake, right? But once again, I say, no, you didn't. They ended up where they were supposed to be, you know, and that's kind of how we look at it. I know in that moment I was kind of upset that people weren't really taking them, you know, serious, and you know, you probably felt the same way. But yeah, it's one of those things that you look back on is like, okay, like God had a plan, and this is how it's supposed to come out. Yeah.
Well, and I even mentioned to Patty, I says, Kenyon's really selling them. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh man, I was trying.
Yeah,
I was trying.
Well, and rightfully so. I mean, and I think the problem with the boys and they were so smooth.
Yeah.
That people really didn't appreciate what they were doing almost. I mean,
I mean, literally, it was like, do they enjoy what they're doing? Are they passionate about basketball? And I'm like, you have no idea. Like these two boys, if they couldn't do anything else, they would do basketball. You know, maybe golf is a close second, but yeah, you know, it's hard because I think as parents, when you're talking to coaches and things like that, they're like, oh, they're just coming from, you know, from that parent side. But it's like, no, I think you guys were practical and honest with him, and you saw how he worked. And I'm like, I know if my kid works this hard on something he loves, like he's going to be successful regardless of where he ends up. And so that's hard. I mean, we weren't parents like some of the parents we see today, but you know, that's a whole other show. When we talk about that, that's a whole other show.
Well, and I think a key to both of our children's success is you knew what it took, and you knew how hard you had to work, and you knew what success was, and I was fortunate enough to we played an undefeated national championship team at Central.
Yeah,
and 74, I guess we won the national championship. But you know, you're not overwhelmed with their success.
Yeah.
You know, and you know that that's still not good enough. You got to take another step.
Right.
And as your boys have shown, and Christopher, the really good athletes and maybe the exceptional athletes, I hate to get too proud here, but can take that next step.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes there is no more steps to take.
Yeah.
And if they show that extra step that they can step up when they need to, I mean, that really makes an exception, I guess.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, definitely. And that really kind of flows into what I was going to ask next about Iowa.
Yeah.
You know, so he goes to camp, and Michael Morgan, actually, he and I were talking because Michael, I believe, was Chris's coach.
Was he?
At the camp. Yeah.
When he was pictures, I've asked people, who was his coach?
Yeah, it was Michael Morgan, because Michael had told Tom, he's like, hey, you got to come watch this, you know, this kid. So I know, like, Coach Close, you know, pushed too, but Michael's like, yeah, Kenyon, like, I was like, this kid can really play. And so he knew he'd made a point of, you know, telling Coach Davis to come and see him. But, you know, I'm going to ask this question, and I'm going to ask more from a mom perspective first, because I know how my mom was during this process. So Chris goes, Coach Davis offers him, Chris accepts probably faster than Chris and Keegan did that offer. But what were your expectations as a mom, knowing that your son was going to go to the University of Iowa and play basketball, but obviously there's the opportunity to get a free education too. So I just want to ask from your perspective, like, what were your expectations when he was like, I'm going to Iowa and I'm gonna be a member of the men's basketball team?
My first concerns was not the expectations as a player.
Mm-hmm.
My expectations as him going over here was the coach and who was around him.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my expectations of feeling good for him, because I knew if he had things good around him, he would do well.
Yeah.
Coaches that understood him, and, you know, and that is a big thing.
Yeah.
Your
absolutely.
coach has to know each individual player. But I was content with TD. I mean, I really was, when we had that first and only meeting.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And Coach Close.
Yeah.
I felt so good about him. And then there was old Streefer.
Oh gosh, yeah. Yeah.
He topped it off as far as my knowing this was a good place for him.
Yeah.
Because he was someone that just was just could take care of them. And
Yeah.
I felt just relieved.
And he still does it. Like, it's like John Streif is amazing.
Oh,
and even Labor Day, we were with Doc Johnson at the house, and Streif came down, and we spent like 3 hours there. You know, he's so thoughtful and intentional with everything he does, regardless if you're a player, a manager, a student. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, they don't build them like John Streif.
He has a Jesus heart.
yes, he does.
He has
yes, he does.
Jesus heart.
Along with that, of course, Christopher had already committed, so then he did take his official visit, and so they're showing us around officially, and we hadn't really met John Streif till then. I don't think.
No, we met, didn't we?
Well, anyway, we go down there, and they go into the training, and it was just instantly, both of us had just got that sense that, hey, this is going to be okay.
Yeah.
I mean, with him, I don't know what it is, but it was just come over or it did me, and I'm sure it did you the way you acted. But so John Streif was a big part of it.
He was.
Absolutely.
And John kept in. I mean, as you know, probably. I mean, John called us 2 or 3 times his freshman year and suggested, well, maybe you need to come over here.
Yeah.
You get a little homesick and maybe have a picnic. Or, Or, hey, he's struggling here a little bit, maybe give him a call. And so John was that guy away from home. And, of course, back to Coach Close. I mean, Christopher, baseball didn't work out his senior year very good because he went on basketball trips with the AAU and the Iowa select team. And so he finally ended up quitting there, which allowed him to come over here a little quicker in the summer.
he made him quit.
He said, this is enough of this. I mean, he did. He was just spinning his wheels.
You're done.
You
know? I had a little meeting with come to Jesus meeting with the coach, and it didn't go very good. He's done. He's not going to put a. He wouldn't quit, but I'm going to make it.
I mean, that's the thing. Sometimes, it's the parent part, but it's also understanding your kid, because you know that because he's on that team, he's not going to walk away from that because he was the ultimate team player.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the same situation with Chris and Keegan with baseball. They quit like 7th, 8th grade, but it was still like they felt pulled because they were playing with their friends and things like that. But it was like, hey, if you want to do this, if the basketball thing is what you want to do, then we have to make sure like we're focused there and we're doing what we need to do for you to reach your goals or reach your potential. But yeah, that's pretty interesting. that you
so anyway, that actually allowed him, and he spent I don't know, a month or maybe 2 months with Coach Close that summer.
Gotcha.
And they became really close, and we did also with Coach.
But
Close.
the thing, I'll get back to the expectations. There was not one time that I didn't think that Christopher could make it.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it maybe went a little slower than I. For his sake. But yet it was still a blessing in disguise. The struggles that they do go through. It's hard as a parent to have to see him go through struggles, but yet it worked out. God.
Well, and Tom's system was such you weren't going to come in as a freshman. And you had to play your role, and nothing wrong with that. I mean, that was obviously Tom.
That's just the way Tom's system was. But.
No, and I mean, that kind of made us not jealous, but a little as time went on, the freshmen come in and just got the green light all the time.
Right.
I mean, it was like, wow.
I
never got to do that. I missed or made a mistake. I was on the bench.
That's funny. That's so funny. Yeah, because I was just thinking, I was like, I came in and I started that year. But I wouldn't have been in a position to start if it wasn't for him. Like, he was the one that took me under his wing and really taught me how to grind it out. Like I did. My first semester was tough, especially academically, trying to balance. It wasn't that I thought school was hard, but it was balancing everything from workouts and practices to your schedule and study table. And I was 18 and, I kind of wanted to hang still, so there was all that kind of thing too that I had to learn, but it led into the struggle. And like you were saying, from a mom perspective too, when you have, say, Chris and Keegan, you have twins. They've always been together, and then you have one that plays and one that doesn't, and trying to keep it positive. And you talk about, that was a time where Michelle really struggled because we felt that they both were talented enough to play. But obviously, you have to you have to jump through the hoops. You have to do the things to put yourself in a situation. And they both came to a team that was a top 5 ranked team with Luka Garza and Joe Wieskamp. So I understood that from a coaching standpoint, but I just couldn't get Michelle to kind of understand that dynamic. Yeah. So it was really tough. Yeah, it was really tough.
Back up a little bit. Christopher did start right off.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
But he earned it though. I mean, it wasn't. He earned it. Yeah.
And George, gosh darn, assistant coach. Oh, how can I?
Oh, Bruce Pearl.
No.
The assistant coach.
That had the two kids.
Walker. Coach Walker.
Coach He came up to us. They had, of course, back then they had scrimmages.
Yeah.
And we were over to Clinton or Muscatine, somewhere over on the first scrimmage. He came up to us. Chris is sneaky good.
Yeah.
You remember Coach Walker? He's sneaky good. So and he did. I mean. And one of the things that stood out, and I know this is off the subject, but I get it coming to my head, so I'll talk about it. But I remember the freshman year we played, I think it was Indiana, at home, and we were up maybe 2 points or 3, I don't know, but it was a close game. And, of course, he took the ball out of bounds.
Yeah.
We were about mid-court, and J-Mo went down on the opposite side on a kind of a flare, took off running, and Christopher hit him with a lead, like
quarterback, yeah.
And I'm just thinking to myself, wow, in this situation, you have a freshman do that,
Yeah.
I mean, that was kind of one of those things that etch in your brain of different things. But but Christopher did. He guarded the ball, but he also took the ball out. He done a lot of things that, because he was a good passer and he was an intelligent player. And
Coach
took after his dad on that.
Yeah, he trusted it. So freshman year he starts and he becomes this. He's like a megastar. He really does. Like obviously he improves a ton going into his sophomore year, and obviously I played with him his junior year. I knew he's an NBA level talent player, but he becomes this star. And much like Chris and Keegan with their path, there's other kids. They have siblings, younger, older, what have you. How did you guys kind of balance that? From a standpoint of, I know with Chris and Keegan, with Keegan getting a lot of attention, we really had to make sure we honored that. And we praised that, but we also made sure that we were balanced in how we were working with Chris and keeping him motivated, and because there could be some jealousy and things like that because he's getting all this attention. So how did you guys deal with that with Betsy and Sarah as he started to get bigger and bigger?
Well, I think it would be a harder situation with you because there were twins.
Yeah.
And I think it would be much harder to try to keep that balance versus 3 years, between them.
Yeah.
And Sarah was still in high school, and then Betsy was in 6th grade, I think it was. But it was a lot easier for us because we didn't go to the away games.
Right.
We always went to the home games. Now, the last year we did go to a couple on the road right before the accident. But we were still able, the way the schedules worked, we were still able to go to Sarah's because they fell on different nights.
Tuesday, Friday versus
Wednesday, Sunday, or Saturday. So that worked out. So it wasn't as hard.
Gotcha.
And Betsy was just in, little
Yeah, so she just kind of
basketball.
Whatever's going on.
She loved to go to the Iowa games, but she was in basketball.
And Sarah was very supportive.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Sarah was, and they both were. They just loved him to death. You know, of course, it was. I know they always said, everybody thinks, oh, you're Chris Street's brother, and Betsy and Sarah. What do I say? I don't look at him as this famous basketball player. He's just my brother.
Yeah.
And I always loved that's what they would say. You know. So, but it was easier for us, Kenyon.
Yeah. It was Kenna. Like Kenna said it the other night, so we were just talking about it because I was going back through some of my notes from so I've had these journals. Part of my testimony and transformation was, keeping journals, whether it's through my Bible study or whatever. And I was kind of going back through some notes. And one of the notes I picked out was it said, your normal is someone else's goal. And so I was saying to Kenna, like, I was like, Kenna, there's people that look at you and like your normal life is like, you have two brothers in the NBA. And people are like, they wish they had that. She's like, yeah, Dad, I'm still not used to that because they're just Chris and Keegan, right? Like it's hard, she's like, no, they're my brothers. They're not these NBA guys because you see them and know them, at home. And it's kind of like,
same situation. That's really
absolutely.
Cool.
But she's like, yeah, Dad, it's just hasn't set in yet, So that's really cool.
And I don't know why, but it is. But even the college players, everybody thinks there's something super special. Well, they're just kids.
Yeah.
They're just, most of them are good kids, which thank gosh Fran has recruited and been lucked out.
Yeah.
And that's the way our kids, I mean, they were just good old salt of the earth kids. I mean, and if you get to know them, well, they're just, they're normal.
Yeah.
And people just.
And they want, like your boys and Christopher, I mean, they want people just to think they're normal.
Yeah.
They're nothing,
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they have our son, which and he was humble.
He was.
Same with your boys. They're just humble, ordinary people, and that's what they want people to refer them to. They don't want them to think they're holier than thou.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
No, absolutely.
I'm on a roll here. I'm sorry.
But they do want to be first in line if they can get around that.
Get a little prestige.
And honestly, it really flows into what I wanted to ask you next about him. Obviously, the accident, it's been well documented, but one of the things that came out of that was this outpouring of love from his friends, and friends that were the only way they were connected was because of Chris. So one thing what after he passed, what did you find out about his character as far as who he was pouring into that maybe nobody else knew? Because I know there were some people, like I found out, like I didn't know Chris was friends with this person or that person, but he was somebody that really took time and poured into people while he was here. And was there anyone that surprised you that like, oh, wow, we didn't know that? Or was there anything that you just like, he was just that dude. Like I said, he was so intentional. He was so intentional with people. And I just know there was a lot of people that didn't know they were connected outside of him. So I just wanted you to speak on that, like just how he did and took time and poured into people.
We were shocked.
Yeah, really.
and I mean, John Hartley was an example. We had no idea that him and John were that close.
Yeah,
we didn't.
And again, here comes Streif to the deal and calls us and says, John is struggling. I'd sure like to have him come over with you some.
Yeah.
This is maybe 2 or 3 weeks or maybe just a week after the accident. And John and him were, great friends.
Yeah.
And then Father Bain thing.
Yeah.
That
I'm asking you about that too. Yeah.
Some other friends that have come forward, but Christopher had this, I call it unique, maybe. I don't know what you call it, actually. But he, like you, I mean, you were his friend and you were all as important at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But then over here, he had another one that maybe he didn't really interact together.
Right.
And he kept them separate. And Father Bain would be another example. We learned stuff. Talk about, did we learn or did, things come to the forefront? Yeah, we had several. I mean, I don't know, 3 or 4, probably more that we had no idea that he was tied into. And I mean, Christopher was active with the football program a little bit.
Yeah.
You probably know more about that than I do, but he used to go down, as I understand it, on Fridays and when they had the scrimmage of people that didn't travel and so forth, and throw the football around, and Hayden had kid him about going to put him in because Christopher was a great quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean,
he was all state.
Del Miller was the recruiting coordinator for Hayden, and I went to college with Del, and he said by far he'd been our number 1 recruit if he was still been available. So,
that's amazing.
Yeah, so
basketball.
Anyway,
he loved football.
Back to Tom here a little bit, and I've told this story several times, and probably your fans have heard it, but at camp, then they offered Christopher. And of course, that was between his sophomore and junior year. And back then, he couldn't commit. I mean, officially couldn't commit. And so we met with Tom after the camp was over, and Christopher wanted to commit right then. But I said, we're going to think it over. So we waited till the next day, and I finally said, guys, this is what he's been working for forever. What are we waiting on? And give which coaches took off on vacation then.
Yeah.
And we had Coach Close's number and called him and said, okay, we're going to commit. And that was, I don't know if you want to get into that or not, but that was a little scary because, here Coach Close and give me numbers at WHO and TV8 and stuff to call him and they wanted people to know that he'd committed to Iowa. But they couldn't say anything.
Right.
So here I am calling a sports director and say, this is Mike Street, parents of Chris Street, and we committed to Iowa today.
Yeah.
And so I remember the WHO, I think it was WHO, the news guy that night says, well, according to Mike Street, and hopefully the coaches will want him in 5 years. He's committed, So it's kind of an uneasy. But then Zob will come on on his talk show and then talked about what the coaches have said and reaffirmed everything.
Yeah,
but there was even up to a couple of years ago, we'd still hear stories, that we had no clue that this was part of his life because Rick Moss had told us just a year or two ago, it doesn't matter, but he said he had taken Ty to a practice.
Mm-hmm.
And Christopher took Ty, said, oh, he'll be okay, because Rick was leaving and he was still shooting, Christopher was. And he said, Christopher said, oh, he'll be fine. Just leave him here.
Yeah.
So I guess it was several hours later and he finally came home.
Yeah.
But I guess Christopher had taken him, which he would have been in junior high.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember. Yep.
And and Kim, they had taken him to a movie.
Oh, wow.
And
That's
then
awesome.
took him home.
Yeah.
And then we heard from an English teacher. He had just a special caring about people because this English teacher had a very disabled little boy, little baby.
Yeah.
And the first thing Christopher did when he came home this one weekend, he went to see this English teacher and his little boy, and he was hooked up to some tubes.
This is Indianola.
Yeah, this is in Indianola.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And he just picked him up, she said, and he was such a natural and just talked
he
to
had
him.
Wires and
and just talked to him and said, you're going to be something someday or something like that to
everybody
him.
else was afraid to pick him up because of all that.
And he just would. But there were just so many people that we heard stories about.
Yeah.
We didn't have any clue that he had done all these things for these people.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, wow.
And back up a little bit on that. She said, and this gal has been, she was a student favorite, great teacher.
Yeah.
And anyway, she says, I heard those long steps coming. I knew it was Chris. He didn't even knock. I mean, maybe he knocked and then come on in.
Yeah, I don't think
she said like you're home. But, again, Walker, a neat little story in my mind is Mike and Joe Walker, two of his kids were at practice, and Christopher was sitting on the sideline for whatever drill, and Joe wasn't Mike, or was it Mike?
I think it might have been Mike.
It might have been Mike. Yeah, probably was.
I think I remember the story. Yeah.
And Christopher says, Mike, I want to be your brother.
Yeah.
Mike says, you can't be my brother. I'm black and you're white, or whatever. I some to that, whatever. And Christopher says, you go ask your dad.
Yeah.
So he runs over and asks his dad. Dad says we can be brothers. He said.
Yeah.
So, that was he loved kids and he loved and anything. But anyway, those are some neat stories.
He was amazing. So neat story. You have to tell the Father Bain going to Mexico story. Like that. that was what that story cracks me up every time you talk about it. So
no, you remember it better than I.
Well,
but
anyway.
The first time I had met this, I gotta go back.
Yeah.
Because when I was riding home with Christopher at Thanksgiving, and he had mentioned Father Bain.
Yeah.
But yet we'd never met him or anything. And then in the summer, here he's going on this trip to Mexico with Father Bain. But I had asked him one time on the way home, I was riding with him from Iowa City, and I says, what's Father Bain like? Is he real religious? He said he never once talks about religion.
Wow.
But when this day when he came to pick Christopher up at Indianola, we had that split 4-year house, and here comes Father Bain barreling in the door in old boxer shorts that were clear up here.
White legs.
White legs, of course, and then white socks pulled clear up to his knees. It wasn't funny. Just, now you continue, but that was the first time I met him.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, and Father Bain was supposed to come over a couple of times when we were there, and not for whatever reason, he didn't show up, so you start wondering about, you don't want to just turn your son loose to anybody.
That's the mother instinct.
Yeah. But anyway, so as they go, and Father Bain, they go down they stay all night, I think, in Tulsa or Wichita somewhere, and then go across the border. Well, it happened to be on a Sunday, I guess, and across the border, and Father Bain had a few cases of beer in the back of his trunk. And, of course, they're inspecting his car, and they're just wondering what all this is. And here's an older gentleman with a younger guy.
Right.
And then the car is actually titled to the
Jesuit priests.
Jesuit
Jesuit
church.
Yeah.
And they didn't have any authorization, so they had to sit there. I mean, they cleared the trunk out and looked at all the cases of beer and wanted to look and see what was going on. And then they finally got text or fax probably back then from the office that said it was okay for the car and everything. And so anyway, they got through the border finally. A little tougher then than it was now, evidently. But anyway, that's another story. But anyway, so they're in Mexico City in this apartment, and Father Bain, being a Jesuit, they were very frugal, would be a polite way to say it. So they got their electric skillets cooking, and they blow the whole breaker on this floor in the Mexican hotel. And Father Bain says, we got to go out in the hallway and look around, too. Otherwise, they'll know we've done it. So they're out there in the hallway looking around.
Who did that? What happened?
But anyway, all the electric skillets, they blew the breaker on the whole floor. So. But anyway, he said, I said, well, you want to go back? He said, no, I think once is enough on that.
Yeah. Oh, my God. That's so funny.
But not that, I mean, because Father Bain is so frugal. But it was and Father Bain wanted to show him the old country and how privileged they were, and they were. But
he did say, Father Bain said, told us afterwards. He said, Chris was. What did he call him, Christopher? He called him Christopher because we do.
Yeah.
But he said he was so interested in every place that I had been.
Yeah.
And he just constantly was asking questions about it.
Very cute. I mean, he's. Everything you guys have said, like I would look at it from this standpoint, and I'm kind of going into the spiritual side, but like he was anointed. Like he was someone that was anointed when it came to, seeing the best in people, connecting people, giving people what they needed to be positive, and he was always like, I would, one way you could say, like the life of the party. Like he always had a smile. Good days, bad days. Like he came to practice, he was smiling and joking. He was a practical jokester, and I always would give coaches stuff. But as I've really, thought about him, and I'm like, he was just one of those people that was anointed to do great things. And I know we look at like, we lost him at such an early age, but he's been able to continue to impact people since then. And there's not a whole lot of people that do that. There's not a whole lot of people we come into contact with during this life that can do that. And he was special, and he was respected. He played the right way. He treated people the right way. And I think that was an example of just how much the outpouring was from other coaches and players and people across the country, not just in Iowa. So, I mean, that's one of the things I would say. Like he was anointed by God, and it's just really cool to hear that some of these stories, and for people that may not even know these stories to hear them too. But yeah, he was special. He was really special.
We had an interesting.
We always thought so.
Yeah.
Well, most of the time.
Yeah, right.
Well, and the sad part is, at being young, I guess, and we're scrambling to make a living during all this. And had a convenience store, and it was not easy back in those days, and we probably didn't appreciate it or enjoy it near like we should have. But you got to do what you got to do when you're young and a family, And we didn't have the NIL back then.
Right.
It come way a little late for us, but and I don't deprive them. But we had an interesting thing happen, and I think it was maybe with Jordan's free throw thing. Michigan State players.
Yeah.
Chris Wyszynski or
Chris Wyszynski, yep.
Yeah.
And then who's the big guy?
Plowski.
Mike Poplowski.
Mike Poplowski got a hold of me in a text or maybe on Facebook and said, "I just want you to know that he'll never be forgotten."
Yeah.
And we have a annual get together, old players at Coach house.
Yeah.
And he's always talked about it. And he said, "We got our ass chewed so many times because of him." And then to follow that up, then that Chris sent us a letter or a deal and they said that, Pulaski said that he talked with us or communicated with us.
Yeah.
So that was, when you have respect to the other team players, and I mean, that really means quite a bit.
Absolutely.
Something that I realized later with all the conversations that people, would come and tell me, situations with Christopher, I realized, and at the time I thought, but not to the depth that I think of it now, but he treated everybody like he really sincerely cared about them.
Yeah.
And anytime you feel important to somebody, you really draw towards that person,
Yeah.
And he made them feel special.
Yeah, he did.
It didn't matter whether they were a stranger, a great friend, he made them feel special. And that's what everybody wants to feel.
Yeah.
They want to be felt like they're a special person. And
Absolutely.
I think he was able to do that. And I don't, except God. I mean, it's, I look back and I just think, wow.
Yeah.
And God had this planned. I didn't like his plan.
Yeah, I know.
But he did. It just seems like he had this plan of Christopher from when he was little.
Yeah.
And to glorify him, to glorify Christ,
Absolutely.
And like I said, a lot of it I don't like, but I'm getting I understand it.
Yeah, I know.
It's just part of, you never want to say, "See you later, honey." You want him with you all the time. But
and
there was a plan.
There was, and I know I told you, I shared this with you guys. Like part of, my journey, especially over the last 5 or 6 years, was dealt with counseling and things like that. And you never want to say goodbye. And I know I didn't deal with it. Like I think it was like 29 years I hadn't dealt with losing them. I hadn't grieved the right way. And it's tough. You don't really understand like how that can pile up and make you push things down. But dealing with it is just giving me a lot of perspective. And like you said, I don't like it, but I know there's a plan. But for you too, it would have been easy and understandable if you guys just said, we're done with Iowa. We're gonna, just ride off into the sunset, live our own life, and kind of leave all that behind. So I want to ask, like, why? Like, why have you stayed so close to the university, the basketball program, and obviously you have a nonprofit in his name? Like, why? Why did you guys decide, like, this is what we're going to do?
I think it's because if you do these things, you keep him closer to us in our hearts.
Yeah.
And you want to just keep him as close as you can, even though we know he's in heaven, but he's still in our heart,
Yeah.
So I think we really did these things, I feel, to keep him closer to us.
Yeah. That makes
well,
and to help other people too. I mean, I don't, because I do think we wanted to help other people that would go into this, that had the same situation or similar.
Yeah.
There's no same situation. Everyone has a different situation in their grief and their loss and whatever, but you still kind of understand You know, like if somebody else has lost a child, you know, you understand, but you don't know exactly.
Right.
You know, but I want to help. We want to help them too, to try to help them to get through it. You know.
Well, and of course, the university has done the basketball program has done a great job to keep us involved. I mean, with Tom and Coach Close and you know, right after the accident, I mean, and Patty had a tough time coming over it. It wasn't easy, but you know, we felt like, you know, we had to support you guys some, and then luckily we've been with the coaches and everything. They've kept us involved.
We've been blessed,
and we've kind of had some ties with some of the players. It seems like we've kind of grabbed a hold of. And,
there's a lot of players that have been very. They just have that. You know, when just like, now I can't even have my memory. Oh, the player we just saw.
Peyton Sanford. Peyton Sanford. Yeah.
Oh, here's my old.
It's all good.
But they just have this special. How they approach you. You can just see that they are very. Can't think of the word.
I mean, they're real. I mean, they
they're very genuine.
They care, genuine, and they care, you know, about our situation, and they wanted you to feel good, you know.
Well, a lot of their parents, you know the story and have relayed the story, and of course the university and all the publicity and so forth. So it's.
But the university has been. Very, very,
and of course,
very
Tom
good.
was great, and Fran had kind of a unique story, and he's probably told it a couple of times. But you want me to get into that at all, or no?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, every story that we can tell about him is pretty cool.
And he talked about this when he was a young coach. I think maybe at Notre Dame or wherever. It doesn't matter. But anyway, he was at a Nike function. And had luckily sitting at the table with Tom Davis, and that was Christopher committed that summer.
Yeah.
And Tom was talking about it because back then at the time he was the earliest commit between sophomore and junior year, and that just wasn't done like it is now, you know. And so Fran says when he was talking about it, he said I really wanted to watch and see how that worked out. So he had a kind of a personal knowledge of Christopher, and anyway, after he became the coach here at Iowa, he was flying to some AAU thing, I think, and sit by Paul Lusk.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So you talk about, you know, so Paul, and for those that don't know, Paul Lusk was Christopher's freshman roommate that transferred to
sophomore.
Southern sophomore there in Midway, and that's when then James Winters became his roommate. But and Paulie has stayed real close to us too. So I mean, we really, you know, we've been fortunate
through God's
people
grace,
like yourself, and
through God's grace. So He has helped us get through.
And you say about Christopher's friend. Well, we feel that says a lot about him. Yeah. The type of friends he had. I mean, Wade Luckenbill and Troy and yourself.
Yes.
I mean,
that. But it's kind of like his best friends, or we kind of think of him as being our second son. You know, I mean, we do.
They're our friends.
You know, if he was our son, then they're our son. You know, it's just just kind of. But I know it's through God. You know.
Yeah, and that's blessed us. And that's what I was going to ask. Like, how did your faith get you through? Because you know, there's always going to be good times, and I mean, you have good days, bad days. You know, where you question things. I think that's the human part of us, that we question why things happen, and when we don't have or get the answer that we want, you know, there's that tendency to get angry. But how does your faith really just carried you through this?
When it first happened, I mean, I knew where he was.
Yeah.
But I struggled for a while. Yeah. I mean, I really did, because you constantly ask yourself, why, dear Lord? You know, it doesn't seem, you as a person, human being, you say, well, he was doing so much down here.
Right.
You know, I know you've taken him to do so much down here too, but I'm like, but he was doing so much when he was here. So
Yeah.
I struggled with that very much. I struggled with it. But then you can't, even though you maybe don't think your faith is being strong, but you know the only person that got you through it was God.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And who
Kinda like
God,
a catch-22 there. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Because without him, you could have never gotten through it. But there again, I always said, thank you, God, for all those people, Christopher's best friends, that you sent to us to help get us through it.
Yeah.
You know, because otherwise, I mean.
Well, and part of that, I mean, there's lots of parts to it, but
Yeah. But really,
Christopher would be home on the weekend and maybe leave early Sunday to get back to go to church. So we knew
and
how committed he was,
Yeah.
and with the athletes in action, he went out and gave testimonies, which we found out after the facts on some of that stuff.
Did it quite a bit.
But we knew Jim Goodrich was a good friend, and anyway. But I asked Father Bain, I said, why? You know, and he said, well, I said, why didn't he stop it, Father? And he said, well, he could have, but he chose not to.
He didn't make it happen, but he chose not to
let it happen.
Yeah.
And and I think, to me,
the Bible says
the fact that when Patty opened the Bible, and right there, here's an underlining phrase that talks about, you know, the wheat seed dropping so it could multiply much more, reseed. I mean, that was to us a sign, and we had a couple other signs that we knew that he was up in heaven and things was okay. Well, it might have been for him, but but to say it was easy was not. And you know, you find one of the toughest parts in my mind is you grow up and think you can control things. You can control what's happening, and you can take care of your kids, and all of a sudden that is blown.
Yeah.
You find out you have no control at all.
Yeah.
And that's a tough feeling. And you just can't give up and say whatever happens, happens. So you've got to get yourself regathered. And we had two other children, and we finally dawned on us, you know, I mean, because you were in
a haze.
Hey, you know, we're not the only one here that lost something.
Yeah.
We got to take care. And it took a while and finally said, hey, we got to pull our bootstraps up here a little bit. And
but you do. And the Bible says God is in control, you know, and you might not like it, but we have grown even stronger in our faith, you know, since so much, I mean, stronger. I mean, there's just. So Christopher's up there clapping his hands, I'm sure.
Right. And
especially with this guy. He's saying, oh, my God. No, for me,
I'm like, he's finally said, okay, it's about time. Like, it took you up until 5 years ago to figure this out. Like, kind of, come on, this whole.
That's what he would.
Yeah, absolutely,
He would say that about us, too.
Yeah.
But yet he'd be clapping at the same time and saying, oh, well done. What is that one verse? That we've got it on the stone. Good and faithful servant. You probably, but I can't remember exactly.
Come on, or that Bible study.
Oh,
I know, that's not the one I got.
I forget my verses. But.
Well, you know,
and let me just say one
more
thing.
Yeah.
And we feel, and maybe we don't express it as much, but we feel really blessed that Christopher had the friends that he had. And they've kept us a little bit in their lives, and the coaches and the university and the fans have been terrific too. I mean, but anyway,
I'm glad you said that, because it is. We do feel very blessed because, and you've been loyal friends.
Yeah.
This has been it'll be 31 years, and you're still that loyal friend.
Yeah.
And that, sometimes you even start to take it for granted, but you can't, because that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
You know, so we thank you, Kenyon.
Oh, absolutely.
And all of his, friends that have kept him.
And there's a lot of us that are still in contact because of him, you know, and that's the thing, like Paulie and I talk and that kind of thing. But and it goes beyond that, you know. It's always kind of like, hey, how you doing? Like, even though Paulie and I never played together, we didn't know each other. Like, honestly, this was the point that connected us, and we've stayed friends and that kind of thing through all these years. But once again, it's one person that connected us that we didn't know at the time was connecting us. You know, it's been unbelievable. But you know, his legacy is unparalleled. You know, there's plenty of people that wanted to come and play at the University of Iowa that were, you know, born in the state because of Chris, you know, and saw what he did. There were people like me who named their kids after Chris. I remember, you know, I spell it with a K, but you know, there's still the love there. Yeah. So what does, oh man, you know, I would normally ask this like individual. I think I will, because I always ask like, what does leaving a legacy mean to you? And you can, you know, make it a you know, a direct reference to Chris or what you guys are doing. But yeah, what does leaving a legacy mean to you?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mom.
I should have done my research a little bit.
It's loaded. I know it's loaded.
Legacy is when a person is remembered years and years down the road, you know, beyond when he was taken, and how they impacted each of those people's lives. That is the legacy to me, I guess, if that makes any sense.
It makes, no, perfect sense. And that's probably what I was thinking too, because you can't quantify. Honestly, you can't quantify his legacy because it's so far reaching. Like you talked about the Bible verse that talked about, you know, when a seed, you know, is planted and it sprouts. I mean, like he's touched so many people, and we don't know if maybe he wouldn't have touched as many people as he's had if he would have been here, but we do understand that having him here for the time that we had him, he was able to impact so many. And that to me is a legacy that a lot of people don't have or may not be in a position to do. So no, that was a perfect answer to that question.
Well, and we've had a lot of help in that with the university and of course with Rick Brown writing a book. And then of course the documentary this last go around. And so there's been, you know, but everybody looks for a role model. Everybody wants to, and the neat thing is, I mean, sometimes you see somebody wearing number 40 and you always kind of wonder, what's behind that? Is there a reason behind that? And talking to Ryan Bowen here, at the golf outing, of course, he wore 40 when he could in the NBA. And now he informed me his son is wearing 40.
Oh, that's awesome.
In college. So
that's really cool.
That's that's neat. So, and we've got, I mean, people that even played with him at AU, you know, named their sons, or they switched to 40. And so, you know, 40 is kind of also means something to a lot of people. So.
That's honestly, I actually don't have, as a head basketball coach, I don't have 40 on the team. Like I honestly don't have that number available to anybody on the team. So, you know, that's, I don't know if it was done subconsciously, but because I was just ordering uniforms for this upcoming season, and I was like, I don't have a 40, you know? And so I don't know. I think, you know, obviously it's a truly special number to me as well. And I remember when Chris was younger, I asked him like, hey, would you ever want to wear 40? And he was like, well, he goes, I know the significance, but you know, he also wanted to kind of do his own thing.
Yes.
And he always felt like with my name and the way I play, that's how I want to honor, you know, Chris.
And we have no problem with that. Don't get me wrong. I mean, if people want to, that's great. And if they don't want to, I mean, they got to be their own individual, and we understand that.
But you think there were so many times, like when I watched, obviously last year, Chris had a great year, but there were so many times I was just like, he played with the energy and worked his tail off. And I was just like, okay, he's making his namesake pretty proud with that.
Right.
So,
and they've got to have it in their heart. I mean,
that's the main
most
place
fans don't have a clue the hours and the work. I mean, this stuff just doesn't happen.
Absolutely.
It takes a lot of dedication, a lot of time, and you have to have a body that goes with it. And I mean, in the Christopher situation, he was never awkward. I mean, he never went through an awkward stage, which is. But anyway,
but you do have to have support too. I mean, that's very important as parents, just like you guys have been so supportive with your boys, and that is so important for kids to have success. You know, they really need that.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things I do is I do rapid fire questions. So we're gonna
wait a minute, we're old.
No, we're gonna have a little fun with this one.
Definition might be a little off here.
We're gonna have a little fun with this one. So I asked this question to a guest before, and I thought it was pretty funny. So for both of you, if you were a dessert, what would you be?
I was a dessert. Oh,
cream puff.
Cream puff.
No, I'm going to say chocolate pie.
Chocolate pie. Okay, I said I would be chocolate mousse. So that would be mine. All right, number 2. If you could, in one word, describe yourself, what would it be? One word. Oh, the word.
Loving.
Loving. Okay.
Boy.
Except to him.
Ornery.
I would say mom. Mom would be her one word.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Or grandma. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. What was I thinking?
I don't know, Kenyon. I'm too complex to be one word.
Okay.
I take that back. I say grandma and mom.
Grandma and mom. Okay. I got it. I would, I don't know. I hadn't even thought about that, but I would say scattered. From the standpoint of, I would say from the standpoint of like, my mind is constantly going and my mouth can't keep up with it. Like Michelle, like, she's like, you don't ever connect thoughts. Like we're talking about one thing and 30 seconds later, you're talking about something else and it has nothing to do with each other. So I would say scatter maybe right now. Okay. And then this one, I love this one because I think we talked about it early in the show. What advice would you give to first-time parents?
Well, enjoy, and it's hard to do as a young. I mean, you're battling to make a living. Everything's stressful, but just sometimes sit back, stand back, and appreciate what you have and the opportunities you have in front of you, and instead of looking at all the obstacles you have.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it.
Oh, I think an important thing is listen.
Listen.
You know, because
you say listen?
Your children, not you. I think that's so important because I think we're so helter-skelter that we see and listen, you know, because I think that's a great
one. And I'll say this because I had to listen. So like I had an incident when Chris and Keegan were seniors. I was the assistant coach. And I had actually kicked Chris out of practice a couple times, and we finally sat down as a family, had a family meeting because I was thinking maybe I should, step down as the assistant coach. And that's what he told me. Like, he's like, Dad, like you got to list, like one of the things that you do is I know you have high expectations of us, but one of the things like we do and we don't get compliments and things like that. So in that moment, even though I had high expectations for him, he said that and I had to listen. So we decided from that moment on that when we were in the gym, it was coach and player. And as soon as practice was over, we walked out the gym doors, it was father-son. And we kept it that way. So one of the most important things for me that allowed me to let them go and have other people coaching was I started to listen to them more. And they've had some great coaches along the way that have gotten them to this point. But I had to.
And I think,
good point.
And I sure wasn't this way as much as I should have been, but instead of always criticizing, make sure you compliment. Maybe start out with a compliment and then say, but maybe we could do a little better here or there. Yeah. And I mean, I was tough on Christopher probably. Yeah. But I knew that he had to, keep getting improving and he was, obviously he was dominant. Whether it would be baseball, basketball, or football. I mean.
He was, and
but we weren't.
You did a good job.
That wasn't the end goal.
Through the grace of God, we did.
Well, you get older, you get a little smarter.
Darn good. You do. You get much smarter.
Good.
It's too bad you don't have those smarts and those experiences when they're younger, and then because as a parent, you're growing just like they are. So it's
And the other, are you done?
It's hard to get.
And the other thing I think, and I've always tried to stress, and I stressed it with Christopher. Hey, you don't get a second chance if you don't do it now.
Yeah,
it's going to be too late. I mean, you don't get a chance to go back and replay that game. You don't get a chance to go back and say, I wish I would have worked harder. I wish I would have. You've got to do it now.
Yeah.
And for these kids, and not. And again, we were blessed with it. He was coordinated. He had the size, and I mean, so not every kid is. I don't care how hard you work, it's not going to work out. And here's a neat story about Christopher. If we got
we're good.
And while he was in high school, this kid that actually his dad was a professor at Simpson, and he was 6'6", 6'7", tall kid, but never really was active in sports, but his dad wanted him to. So his dad come to Christopher and said, "Can't you try to get my son out for basketball and everything else, blah, blah." And I've been trying to work on him, but he was good in arts. I mean, he was an actor and maybe played in the band. And Christopher told the dad, he says,
Mr. Larson.
Larson was his name. Okay. Maybe you just support him in what he likes to do.
Wow.
And he said his dad said he felt like he's 2 inches tall. that a high school kid had to tell him.
Yeah.
And I think that's true for, if you talk about parents, support your kids in what they love to do. Don't let, you see so many parents, and you see this, that want to have their, actually work through their kids to be the athlete they weren't.
Yeah.
And push them. And I mean, that's the way I interpret it. But anyway, if you understand.
Yeah. No, I understand it exactly, because that's the part of it. Like, as a coach, I've come into that where I asked a player, well, your parents are telling me that you want to do this. What do you want and what makes you happy? And it's completely, I wouldn't say it's opposite, but when you have parents that are pushing the narrative that their child wants to play Division I basketball, and that's the situation, and you talk to the child and they say, I love playing basketball. I don't care what level. Do I want to play after high school? Absolutely. I don't care what level it is. I just love playing the game. And those are the times where you're like, okay, like you're saying, the parents are pushing for something at the kid, and they need to listen to the kid.
Yeah.
So for me as a coach, it's like, I get that. And I know what you want to do, so I can help you get there. You're going to have the conversation with mom and dad, because this is your dream. And I talk about it like it's their dream. Whatever their dream is, support it.
Right.
And do what you can. And I, like with Chris and Keegan, they wanted to play basketball. And I think they, like, if we're going to do it, we're going to go to prep school, we're going to focus, and we did it. And that was support. I didn't know how we was going to do it. I know how I was going to afford it. I was robbing Peter to pay Paul for like 7 months. But like you said, you support it. And it's different with Demetrius, our oldest, and it's different with McKenna, because she doesn't want to play after high school. So you have all these different dynamics, but you're absolutely right. You just have to support the kids. And, Chris was very wise.
And I think
he was.
Some people have said that Christopher was older than his age.
Oh, yeah.
So he was wiser than his age.
Old soul.
He always was just like that guy that he told his dad that. I mean, what 18, 17-year-old could even think about that?
Yeah.
To tell that older person, so.
That's interesting.
Wiser than,
okay, this might get a little weird. So when my Christopher was born, I went down to see my grandparents and family in South Carolina, and they're very spiritual and things like that. And so I remember my grandmother and a couple of my aunts saying, like, just like the look in his eyes and the way he talked, Chris had an old soul. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, we have, even his baby pictures, just the way he looked and acted, they were like, he has an old soul. So I mean, it's obviously there's so many things that connect us, but as we're talking, like, there's so many little things that I didn't connect, and it's like we're bonded in so many ways, and I think Chris and Chris are bonded in a lot of ways too. So
Well, we're very proud of your boys.
Yes,
I'll tell you that.
I appreciate that.
Michelle's done one wonderful job.
Yes, with all of us. yeah, no doubt. She's done a great job. Yeah.
She's got 4 kids instead of 3. That's always what people would say about him.
Yeah.
With me, you've got 4 kids, and the biggest one is the hardest one.
Yeah, no doubt. But hey, I definitely I so appreciate you guys coming on the show. And one of the things I always do is I leave with a quote. And today I have a quote. And it's always about the way most of my quotes are how I see the guests that I have on the show. And this one was from an American frontier soldier by the name of Robert Rogers. It says, "My faith didn't remove the pain, but it got me through the pain. Trusting God didn't diminish or vanquish the anguish, but it enabled me to endure it." And I think, like, as we've talked, like, that's a perfect example of how God has definitely continued to hold you up, be a foundation for you guys with all the highs and lows over this last 30 years. And so I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate you guys so much. I love you guys so much, and the support you've given me and my family, like, I can never repay you guys for that.
Oh, my goodness.
We don't think we've been there enough.
Oh, anyway. We don't. But you guys you know how much you guys mean to us. We might not see or talk that much, but you are very, very special. And you are in my prayers. I don't know what he prays, but
he's always giving me crap. Yeah.
Thank you for letting us be a part of your family, Kenyon.
There you go.
I appreciate it.
That's what we really appreciate.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you to Wise Financial, Stellus Fresh Mex, and Storyline Multimedia. Without your support, this show would not be produced. And thank you, the audience, because you make this happen as well. Remember, you can always go to the YouTube page, Talk About Network. Give us a like, subscribe, and hit the notification button so you know when a new episode drops. You can also go to the iHeart platform, Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Kenyon Murray. Until next time, keep connecting. This podcast is sponsored by Storyline Multimedia. Storyline is an Iowa City-based media company that specializes in creating high-quality video, photo, and audio productions for local businesses. Not only that, but they also produce a number of podcasts, including this one. So if you're interested in sharing the story of your business with the world, contact them today by visiting StorylineMultimedia.com. And remember, your story matters.